Hey guys, what's up? My name is Dalton, and today we're going to be talking about how you can use Aperture to create drama and emotion in your photos. What's up guys, and welcome back. You know, Aperture is a pretty complicated topic, and I think a lot of us, especially when we're beginner photographers, are kind of confused by it. We don't really understand what it means. We don't really understand how it affects our photos. As you grow as a photographer, you'll really learn how important Aperture is for capturing that perfect shot. Aperture has everything to do with the focus of your image, and if you're using the correct aperture, you can really create a lot of mood and emotion that you want to have in your photo. So Aperture is actually pretty easy to understand. Aperture basically refers to how wide the lens can open up. Lower apertures, such as 1.4, 1.8, or even 2.0 are really good apertures because they allow the lens to get really wide, allowing more light in, and also greatly reducing the depth of field in your images. When you have a shallow depth of field, it allows you to focus specifically on your subject and not have a lot of distracting information in the background. If you're shooting a portrait and you're shooting at f8, f12, which is a smaller aperture, think about when you squint your eyes and you're looking at something and you want to focus a little bit more, you'll squint your eyes. That's because you're shrinking your irises and you're allowing to see that subject in more detail. When you shoot a portrait, you know, with your eyes squinted or with the lens stopped down to a tighter aperture, you're going to get more information in the background. There's going to be more focus in the image. But if you open that aperture wide up to 1.4, 1.8, and you make it nice and wide, you're going to focus specifically on your subject and have the rest really nice and out of focus. And we call that bokeh in photography. And I think bokeh is a really sexy term right now. A lot of people have thrown it around. And that's basically what it means, is to have a lot of background blur. And it kind of often takes the shape in these balls, bokeh balls we call them. And they're kind of out of focus balls that really add an artistic touch, and they're really, really cool. So I like to utilize wide apertures in a lot of my photos because I like to have that out of focus look. That's my style. You know, some people like to have sharpness across the entire image. They like everything in sharp focus. If you look at, you know, Ansel Adams, one of the most famous landscape photographers of all time, he popularized using a really small aperture. Basically, he would go out into these, you know, beautiful landscapes in Yosemite in California, and he would close his lens down really, really small, and then he would just leave it there. And he would let it sit and all the light to come in. And that just allowed him to get tack sharp focus throughout the whole image. But now, you know, with lenses that open up super wide, you can create a different look, and that's what I like to do. So if we look at this graphic here, we see 1.4 on the left, and then we see f8 on the right. And those numbers are representing the aperture, right? So f1.4 is a really wide aperture, and you can see how big that is. A bunch of light's going to be able to come in through that. And with that, you're going to get a really shallow depth of field. So if you focus on something close up, the entire image around it is going to be completely out of focus. If you go to f2, you know, you're going to get a little bit more focus. Think about you're squinting your eyes, right? You're getting a little bit more detail. And then the same thing as you go up the ladder. And then if you look at f8, it's pretty small. It's a pretty small aperture, right? So a lot less light is gonna get in through there, but you're gonna get a lot better focus in your images. That could be a good thing, that could be a bad thing. Like I said, for me, I don't usually shoot at f8 because I like to have a lot of out of focus areas so I can focus on specifically one thing in my image. Now I want to take a look at some of the photos that I've shot and tell you what aperture I was shooting at so you can kind of see what it looks like when I shoot at all these different apertures. So this was shot at 85mm f1.4. And the reason I shot it at f1.4 is because I wanted to have the background out of focus. I wanted to focus specifically on the hand pouring that, you know, strawberry sauce onto that beautiful dessert. So I stood back, and with the 85, you can stand back and still get very close to your subject. And you can see how blurry that background is. Look at that bokeh, it's beautiful. I mean, it adds a really artistic touch to it. If I shot this at like f8 or something, that background would be in a much sharper focus. And that's not what I was going for in this image because it would distract from what the main purpose of this image is, and that's to show the food, right? The food in the hand and this dramatic scene where you're pouring the strawberry sauce on this gorgeous dessert, and that's what I wanted to show. Not the background. That's not important to me. So 1.4 is a great aperture to do that. And here's another shot. And this is what I was talking about, that mood or that emotion, right? I can get I can completely blur the background when I shoot with a wide aperture. You can see here, I'm really up close to my model here, Phi, and I'm shooting with the 85 at 1.4. And look at the background. I want you to take a second to look at the background and look how blurry it is. There's nothing distracting there. Maybe on the left side, those hoses are a little bit distracting, but it's not too bad. I think it actually balances out the image in some ways. But you can see how having that shallow depth of field and having that out of focus areas in the background really allows you to focus 100% on your subject and really pull out all the emotion. And I think her eyes and her face and her facial expression say so much in this image. And I wanted that to be the focus, not the bathtub, not the wall, not the hose, her face. And that's the most important thing. And that's why using a low aperture can allow you to get a lot of mood in your photos. Now here, this image, I shot this at f4.0. Now f4.0 typically wouldn't be considered a low aperture or a wide aperture. It's kind of in the middle. And a lot of starter lenses have this aperture. But the reason I chose f4.0 for this specific image is because I thought those doors and that ladder in the background were actually pretty cool. I didn't think that they took anything from the image. I think that they added to the image. And I wanted to pull out some of that detail in the background instead of completely blurring it out. So if I shot this at f1.4 and I kept my focus where I do have it in this image, my focus is on this glass in this little bottle here. If I shot this at 1.4, everything behind that glass and that bottle would be very, very blurry. It'd be out of focus. And like I said, I like that in my images, but for this, I wanted a bit more detail. Now this next image I put in here because I think I could have done a much better job with aperture. I shot this at 35mm f2.5, but look at the table, it's out of focus. It's out of focus, and the only thing that's in focus is the cup. The coffee itself is in focus, the foam of the coffee. I did want to have the ground out of focus, but I didn't want the table out of focus. And if I shot this, at 5.6 or at f8 instead of f2.5, I probably could have had that table in focus. And that would have been a much more interesting image. Because it's all out of focus, your eye is kind of hunting. Your eye is hunting around the image and looking for something to focus on. The only thing it can focus on is the coffee. And it's still a compelling image, it's still a really cool image, but I could have done a better job by reducing my aperture and making the image just sharper in general. Maybe I think 5.6 or f8 would have been really good here. And this is another example of where I kind of missed on aperture. I shot this at f1.4 on my 85mm. And you can see here, like I focused on the cookie, but because it's such a shallow depth of field and I was so close to her, only half the cookie is in focus. Now even only 25% of the cookie is in focus. If I shot this at f2.0 or f2.8 and just made the aperture a little bit smaller than 1.4, I could have had the whole cookie in focus and still kept her nice and out of focus. And I think a really important lesson to take from this is that no aperture is suitable for every situation. Every shot you take is different, and every environment that you shoot in is different. So sometimes you're gonna wanna shoot wide open at f1.4. Sometimes you're gonna wanna stop down to f8, f12 to get more focus in your scene. It really just depends on what you're shooting and what you're going for. Experiment. Try new things, and in every scene, shoot every scene with a few different apertures. So if I'm taking a photo of my coffee, first I'll start at f1.4. I'll take that, and then I'll stop to 1.8, stop down to 2.0, 2.8, f5.6, and I'll just see what looks best later. I can take all those shots. We're in the digital age, it doesn't matter. I can take a bunch of shots and look at it later. Sooner or later, you'll find what apertures you like to use. You'll find what works for your style. Like I said, for me, I like to shoot wide apertures, f1.4, f1.8, f2.0. And all of my lenses kind of reflect that. 85mm f1.4 is one of my good lenses. 55mm f1.8, still pretty wide. And what I'm shooting on now is a 35mm f1.4. And those are pretty low aperture lenses. Those are good lenses. They're all prime lenses, which means you cannot zoom with them. But I love these lenses because they give me that nice wide aperture that gives me this really mood and a lot of mood and emotion in my photos that's totally characteristic of my style. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to learn more, you can check out my recent course on Skillshare on cafe and food photography. I kind of show you how my process works. I show you, I take you into a cafe and I take some photos. I show you how I edit, all that stuff. So it's a really, really useful resource, and you can join for, I think, $1 for like 3 months on Skillshare if you use my specific link, which is down below. If you guys want to watch the intro video to my course, click here or here. I'm not really sure where I'm going to put it yet. Click that link and it'll take you to my intro video. That's a really good way to kind of be introduced to it if you are kind of on the fence about taking it. With that said, thank you guys so much, and I will certainly see you in the next video. My name is Sean Dalton, daltonstills.com. Catch you guys later.